All right. Welcome to Delivered with Dylan and Dale. This episode is called Getting Paid to Think, how we turn RFPs into discovery. The focus of this conversation is going to be around what are some better ways of approaching the RFP process in general as an expert service provider. And Dale, I want to start with you. I want to can you paint the scene for us, what it's like to get an RFP, what that from the expert position and kind of what that makes us feel like?
Yeah, so uh, we're entrepreneurs, but we're also salespeople, right? And we think our company's great and everyone should use us. That goes without saying, right?
Mm,
So you get an email, no matter what your business is, right? Hi, I'm with the, so and so, insert big name, right? It could
mm,
be something a municipality, a
right.
sports team, an artist, something cool, and you're like, "Whoa, this is cool. This is right up our alley." And they're going on, and you're like, "Yeah, this project's right up our alley. I think we'd be great at this." And then they get to, "Please see attached RFP." And then you look at the email, and there's like 10 people copied on the email line. You're like, "Oh,
Mm.
things were going so well. I thought they were emailing me because I'm an expert, right?" No, it turns out there's like this broadcast, and who knows what kind of work they've done to get the names, right? You're in just like this pond of
Right.
fish looking at this thing, and it's like a scramble. It's like seagulls on French fries at some level,
Mm.
right? So what we want to talk about today is like, okay, slow down, seagull, right? Let's, before we just jump in and start like being ravenous entrepreneurs, let's step back a minute and think about what's happening here, right?
Right. Right. And yeah, like you said, if you're being CC'd on an email with 20 other people, that means that you're not being viewed as any different than those people, right? Like you are, it's a clear sign that you're not seen as a specific expert. You're seen as one of many. And typically, I've responded, in my career, I've responded to a lot of different RFPs. And what it seems like is like you said, a municipality or larger organizations who are saying, here's our problem, what is your best price? Essentially, let's put the problem out there to 20 different, in the language they'll use in the RFPs is vendors, which we know is, which we've talked about, is kind of a red flag. So they'll put that out and they'll say, okay, who can solve this problem for the lowest price? Is typically they're sourcing all these different quotes for, and that's typically how they're going to buy. And there's this great TED talk on 5 billion reasons to change the RFP. And in this TED talk, this guy, Cal Harrison, references this phenomenon that happened in Canada, essentially, where they were experiencing really poor snow removal on their roads. And they had to launch this entire investigation to see, and it's dangerous in Canada if you're not getting snow off your road, right? So they had to
Sure.
launch this entire investigation to figure out why is it that we're not getting these results? Why are we not getting snow off these roads? Why are we experiencing these conditions? And it basically reported that they had issued an RFP process and they selected a vendor, the cheapest vendor. Basically, they bought on price, and then that cheapest vendor didn't have the equipment, they didn't have the personnel, and they didn't have the expertise to do it well. So,
Didn't have the money to run their job properly.
right, when you buy on
There's a
price,
shock.
right. So, and the other thing is when someone presents you with an RFP, you need to understand the problem if you're going to put a price to it, right? Like it's a legally binding document, and he references this in this TED talk where how can you be confident putting a price on a project or a service in a legally binding way before you've done any discovery? And that in order to put a price on something, you need to understand the problem, which requires both your expertise and your time. And so he specifically references, I think the example is a construction project, but something similar would be, let's say an RFP goes out for a $40,000 project. You can kind of roughly put it in the $40,000
Sure.
bracket. You have to go through this whole document. You have to understand the problem if you're going to price it and put together some solutions. Let's say you spend $5,000 worth of your value, right? Your skills, your thinking, your knowledge, just to get through the sales process. And you have 20 potential vendors doing that. Like you said, the seagulls going to the fry. The simple math on that is You have 20 vendors spending $5,000 of their expertise and value on a $40,000 contract. You're spending $100,000 from, in terms of all these local partners put together, maybe not just local but partners put together, $100,000 on a $40,000 project, which makes no sense. And again, that's what happens when you start giving away your knowledge for free. And Dale, I know you've kind of worked in some spaces in which that's not how it works, right?
Yeah, so certain industries, it's becoming more of the norm to have a discovery process, and you're doing one, which I commend you for.
Mm.
You get this RFP, and every line item is 20 questions. So for a website, it will be something like, we need a place where we can log in and change company data. Like, okay, that's really ambiguous. Like,
Right.
there's so
Yeah.
much, that one line we could talk for 2 hours, right?
Right.
So in remodeling, you get something similar. I have a friend, Joey K, and
Shout out Joey K.
there's a lot of remodelers who are doing this. They get a kitchen from an architect, or someone designs something at home on a home design, and they're like, how much for this kitchen? And it's like, they get pushed back too. It'd be like, I can't, like, this is a piece of paper with some lines on it. And, they have a discovery process. You pay a certain amount and you go through the design inch by inch. What's this? What's that? What are we using? And some people don't understand. It's like, well, what color is the faucet? What's on the floor? How big are these cabinets? Like, what's the existing house like? What are we working with? Who's going to be involved in the project? There's so many unanswered questions. You can't build something from a piece of paper and no input. It's just,
Right.
I mean, you can at some level. You're going to have a tremendous amount of waste. And in the construction industry, 3/4 of projects that are done on a piece of paper like that never get built, right?
Mm.
They weren't thinking about budget at the beginning. No one told the designer what their budget was. No one told them the quality of the products, right? There's a lot that goes into it. And I think, as creatives, I don't want to use the word respect. I think we owe it to ourselves to give the customer that same type of service, right? So throwing a number on a piece of paper is just not going to work,
Right.
right? So I would like to hear from you. What's happening here, Dylan. Like, tell us about, why is the discovery process is obviously good for us because we want to do a good job, but why is it good for the client?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that that's a great question. I think if you're going to try and present this to clients and have conversations with clients, you need to be able to articulate why it's good for the client. And I'll do that, but I just also want to take a step back and I want people to visualize. And this is from I'm pulling this exercise from a guy called David C. Baker, who writes this great book on the business of expertise. And he talks about, imagine, you have a house. If we're going to stick with like the remodeling idea, you have two
Yeah.
rooms, right? You have a strategy room and an implementation room. And
Mhm.
most of the value of your service and what you do is in that strategy room, right? Like you shouldn't allow clients to just skip the strategy room and go to the implementation room. They should have to go through the strategy room to get to the implementation room. And discovery is strategy, right? Like you said,
Right.
someone's like, hey, I want to create a portal on my website for volunteers or for members, and it's like there's a trillion ways of doing that, right? And they all fall on a scale of better to worse. And so your job as the expert, as someone who's done this a lot, if has filled this need in, is to find, based on their budget and their needs, what is the best option on that spectrum. And you should and then implement it. But you shouldn't give away the finding out the best option for free, right? Like that, once people know what the best option is, implementation is a commodity. It's much easier to kind of do. So and then in terms of, so that's why it's good for you, is because you get paid to think and you get paid for the high value work that you do. Why it's good for the client is that a the client gets better value, in my opinion, because when the client, as I think you'll agree to this, Dale, when someone hands you money for something, you feel a commitment to that person and you own it, right?
Absolutely.
Like you put that weight on your shoulders. Like if someone's paying you for a project, you are committed to seeing that project through, right? So
Not just that, the success of their company could be riding on the work you're doing, right?
Right, right. And so if you're not being paid to think, you're not going to value it the same way, right? You might not necessarily take as much time and as much consideration and as like you said, as much, you might not put as much importance on it if you're not being paid by this person to do that kind of work. But if you are being paid by the client to do the strategy and discovery piece, you're going to take it very seriously. So in my opinion, the client actually benefits because you hold it to higher esteem as the provider.
Right.
So that's one way I think the client benefits. I think the client also benefits because they get to test you out before any sort of large transactions, right? So the other thing about handing money over is that there is that big commitment, and if you just skip right into big contract, big transaction stage, there's a commitment where, and we've talked about this before, you're marrying before you're dating, right? So the client gets to test you out, gets to feel you out, gets to see if you guys are going to work well together, if you're not going to work well together. And then my last component of why it's good for the client to actually pay for a discovery is because you, as the partner, as the expert firm, you're gonna have a more objective opinion as to what is good for this client, right? If you're counting on getting the implementation work as the only compensation you're getting from this client, right? Like, you're trying to sell them for free in the early process in order to get the work for the actual project. You're gonna tell them what they want to hear to hire you, right?
Right.
Because that's where the money is coming. That's where the food is coming. That's where the next meal is coming, is from like getting them to hire you. But if you're getting paid for the strategy, you could tell them, hey, you're too big for us, right? Like, which we've done in a discovery project, is like, whoa, your technical needs are too complex. You shouldn't be on WordPress. You should be somewhere else. I don't feel like I'm trying to formulate a plan for them that fits us. I'm saying, here's a plan that you need. And and everybody wins in that situation because we're being paid to tell them that, and they're not committing or getting kind of misled by somebody who just wants to, get a project. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think it's, I think some people look at the discovery process as a waste of money, but it's not. It's we talked about RFPs. You're probably going to add money to your RFP, spending this discovery time with them anyways. They're paying for this no matter what, right?
Right.
The question is, do we want to, I don't want to use the word waste our time. Do we want to use our time working with a piece of paper, getting the right information while 20 other people are doing it at the same time, right? That's a difficult one. And just like in remodeling, in your discovery phase, the client walks away with something substantial that's a lot of value that they can use. If they come out of this saying, you know what, Dylan, we just don't jive, they walk away with this amazing package of information they can use elsewhere. This is not a waste of money. This is a huge investment, right? This is an investment way above what you're going to get in the stock market, right? Your returns.
Right. I was just going to say, like, if you're trying to figure out how to present this to clients and get past that initial inertia that you're just mentioning, where it's like, wait, I don't understand. I'm paying you and I'm not getting a website, or I'm not getting my kitchen redone, or whatever.
Yeah. Tell us how to turn that around.
Well, I think, like you said, the key is they should get a deliverable, right? There should be something that comes out of that discovery process. It shouldn't just be, hey, I'll talk to you for a couple hours. I mean, that's great. And I'm sure you can transfer a lot of knowledge through just a conversation and speaking with an expert, just a consultative, we do it with doctors, we do it with attorneys, we do it with everybody. But it can be even easier if you have a product that you deliver to this person, whether it's a drawing or a schematic or a blueprint or a project brief or a mock-up or an outline, some sort of deliverable that they get as a result of this. To them, that's more of a transaction, right? It's like, I give you this, I get this, we can walk away, we have something, we've paid for something, I can show my team members that we got something out of this, like I can I can justify that expense mentally. It's easier to do when there's actually some physical representation of that work versus just kind of a couple of conversations back and forth, which is what we do. We'll do a
Right.
project brief, which is like a nicely outlined, like here are the, you take this, go to a freelancer online, have them do the implementation piece, right? Like that's easy. Like you could have anybody from anywhere in the world take this document and put it together, right? And obviously
Right.
there's a lot of nuance to that as
There's
well, but
still there's still going to be a lot of work. There's still going to be
yes.
gaps between, but at least you have a better idea.
Right. Right. So, that's one way of doing it. I've also seen, if you're trying to present some sort of discovery engagement, breaking off before you get into large transactions, smaller transactions in order to do those things we talked about, which is make a more objective plan, date before you marry. One way of doing it is to present that as like, okay, well, then we'll credit the cost of that to the larger project. That works if you're doing any sort of like, if you have very transparent pricing, right? Where you're like, it's X number of dollars for this. They can see, all right, I paid you $500 for the discovery. It's, you charge $10,000 for a website. So it'll be $9,500. If you don't have super transparent pricing, they might see through that and be like, well, how do I
Right.
know you're not just marking your project costs up and then whatever. But one way is maybe credit it towards the larger project. I don't know, Dale, any other thoughts on how you might present a discovery in a way that clients can kind of wrap their heads around if they're not used to paying for strategy?
I think you so without I think you the biggest part of this is having the confidence
Hmm.
to knowing how you need this project to work for you to be successful, right? Everyone's discovery process could be different. Mine could be 2 hours, yours could be 2 days, right?
Right.
I think the point is that we want to, instead of being super excited jumping in, we need to slow down, think about what's happening here. Maybe we pass completely just because it's that thing.
Right.
But I think, just explaining to the customer why you need this information and how it will save them money and be confident. Say, this is our company policy. You don't have to say, this is the way I want to do it. Our company policy, based on prior success, is we do it this way. And I understand that doesn't work for you, or that I
Hmm.
understand that this may be a new concept. If it doesn't work for you, totally get it, you know? But we just can't proceed in the way that you're asking us to. I think just being honest, right? Sales and business is about being honest and creating relationships. And I feel like if you're just honest with someone, um, you know, you can sugarcoat the honesty. You don't want to say, I hate RFPs. I'm not wasting my time with this.
Right.
You got to
Right.
boil it down like, okay, why do you hate wasting your time with this? Hey, Dylan, you know what? I appreciate you inviting me to this. But honestly, there's 20 people. It looks like there's so many people here. I don't know what's going on. I'm willing to talk a little bit more about you, but we're not going to just send a number over. Do you want to talk?
Right.
It's super easy. And then you got to have confidence in how you present that next phase, and you got to be willing to walk away, right?
Right. Yes, that's a good point. Is don't all of a sudden be, like you've told me before, don't start transforming yourself to fit this specific mold, right? And one thing you said that I think, yeah, I mean, if you're sitting in the client seat, it's, if you can communicate it, clearly, it's, you could say, this is a cost saving procedure, right? Because we're reducing, it's a cost saving and a risk reduction procedure because we're reducing the risk that you spend money on the wrong solution, right? Either with us or with a different partner. So right away, cost reduction, and there's greater guarantees of success, right? You can say, we'll save you time, we'll save you money, and we have a higher likelihood if we do this of achieving success because we do more of the planning and more of the strategy in the beginning. So if you're a client, I think that it's actually a huge selling point. And that's one other thing I wanted to mention is if you're getting caught in an RFP process with 20 people, the most important thing you need to do is differentiate yourself if you want the work, right? If you just do what everyone else does, you're going to sit on another stack of RFPs, and not be any different. But if you say, hey, we actually have a policy that we don't respond to RFPs. We actually, this is what we do. You've immediately created a kind of a calving of you from the rest of the group. and now you're in your own
Right.
space. And it actually can be a really good tactic to win work because I've heard it from the right clients, which we've talked about. I've heard it from the right clients where they say, "Wow, like that's the reason I want to work with you guys is I haven't heard people put this into words. I haven't heard this offering be presented." And so it's actually it might be a really useful tactic to actually differentiate yourself and actually win the project.
Yeah, it's a good point. I would say, we're kind of coming up against the clock here.
Right.
My final parting point is, I think about this a lot. If you're constantly in a room where you're being asked to change yourself, right? You're in the wrong room, right?
Mm,
If you're constantly getting the type of clients that want you to bend your process or are doing this, you have to think about, you surrounding yourself with the right people, the right customers. Take your marketing up a notch. Look at your website. Look at your communication. Are you
right.
attracting these kind of people?
Right.
Um, and I think that can also help when that RFP comes in, right? So take that step back and look at what you're doing overall, and are you overly attracting those types of people?
Right, 100%. Is it your messaging, your positioning, your design, your communications? Why are you getting people who don't see eye to eye with you? I think that's 100%. Like you said, we're getting close to the end. I just want to wrap up and say, recap why discovery is good before large engagement. A, you get paid to think, which is the biggest value you bring to these engagements is the stuff before implementation. So that's A. B, the client gets a better value. We talked about that because there's the risk reduction, the cost savings, the more higher likelihood of success in terms of outcomes. And then you guys get to work out any sort of client partner dynamics before large transactions take place, and things get messy. So I think overall, I don't see a lot of arguments against the discovery process. And if, like you said, if someone's trying to get you to blow by the discovery process, walk away. Like don't start, because then you're going to end up in the same position you had been in before, and you'll probably regret it. So anything
Right.
else, Dale?
That's it. I think this is a great topic. Hang in there, people.
Right.
It
Get paid
does
to
get a
think.
little bit easier.
Get paid to think. It certainly does when you get paid to think. All right, Dale, adios.
Adios, my man. Have
Bye.
a great weekend.